You've made an EP before, 2 years ago now almost.
Yes.
Yeah. With this new one, there is a sense of cohesiveness and narrative strength, which feels like has very much become more present in your songwriting since that point. How do you feel that you've evolved as storytellers in your music?
Wow.
From that EP to this one?
I think, well, the first EP was mostly just like a collection of songs. Like, we had those songs, we'd worked on them like some of them were like years old and had been in different kind of like variations and different forms. And then when we signed to the label, they were like, oh, we want to like start a new chapter, so we're going to get everything out and just like release it. And we were buzzing because our deal is, the first part of the deal is an EP, so we're like, the closer we can get to doing an album, that's cool. So we just kind of put that out. And it kind of felt like where we were at a time, but it was less of like a cohesive thing. And then through the course of just doing single after single after single, when you get to doing like an EP, or you get to the thought of like, oh, maybe we could do something, it's just for us, it was just such like a delight to be able to tell a story that's more than like one song long. Because we were like, not that we were stuck in singles land, because that's cool too, because it gives you the freedom to be able to do something entirely different from what you did before, which is really cool. But when we were like, oh, I think we're ready to like release a body of work, we were like, oh, that's dead cool, because we've just been releasing singles and writing random kind of songs about things for 2 years, a year and a half now. It'd be really cool to do what we haven't been able to do, which is tell a story throughout the whole thing. And I'm like a total musical theatre guy. That's where like I came from. So telling stories through music is like my whole vibe. And we were just really excited about being able to do that. I guess it wasn't like it was a.
I think it's
conscious
like
choice.
Yeah, well, it definitely was. Yeah, I think it's like an added opportunity to get a big body of music, or like the space to do a big body of music like an EP. I think it's an opportunity to tell one overarching story and then loads of stories in between that. Like,
sick.
I think that's much more interesting way to go about it. And I think the fluidity, kind of as you were saying, is just, I think that's just kind of a thing that comes across over time. Like you can't rush fluidity over your music, or consistency in like a sonic sense and like a sound sense. Consistency, good and bad, yeah, like everyone's inconsistent, but to have like a consistent, cohesive sound, I think through it like 6 or 7 songs, I think that like can only really come from time, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And again, a lot of those songs, like as much as we say we were like, oh, it was like a massive thing, a lot of those songs existed before we had the idea for the story too. Like, we're complete fucking bullshit artists. No, we're not complete, we're like 80%, but like if anyone's like, oh, it was just a complete this and that, like they're lying. Like, you do a lot of this shit kind of has the things you tend to write about, us as songwriters and creators of like music and producers, the stuff we tend to make, you fall back on certain things. Like for us, like growing up, childhood is like a massive thing, like becoming an adult, like love being a part of that is like a massive thing, and those are songs that we've been writing. So we had like Bad Tattoo and I think Blue and White already, just from things that had happened in our lives. And then when we were like, oh, we want to do a body of work, we're like, this could fit into a story, that being there and this being there, and let's fill in the blanks, which was super exciting to do, because it's like, I think sometimes it's really exciting to write to a script. It's like, okay, we need to write a song that fits into this part. Yeah. And sometimes it's like, it's oppressive, you know what I mean? Like, you want to just be able to be free and write whatever you want to write in that moment. But we found that kind of like, okay, it needs to fit into this thing, it needs to be about this, quite freeing. And then when it came to like doing intro and outro, that was like probably the most fun we've had doing things, because we were able to like, we're like, okay, they don't need to be singles, so it doesn't even need to sound like pop music, it can be anything, it can just be like little things that sum up where we were at the start of the story and where we were at the end of the story, and then flip it around. And that stuff was the most fun stuff to do, I think. Yeah,
it was. And like narrative wise as well, it's probably the easiest to set off as well, the easiest parts to do as well, because you can, in any story, you can start from anywhere you want, and you can end anywhere you want. So
well, we just picked up where
we just kind of like picked somewhere.
Yeah, like, okay, I'm sad now.
Yeah. Sick. We're about to get happy. Okay, we're sad again.
I mean, even though you're saying intro and outro felt free from the pressure to be a single, there's a lot of lyrical heft in intro. Like, there's a lot of kind of, I mean, if you put it at the start, it would have been scene setting, but when you put it at the end, it almost feels like tying up the loose threads and kind of completing the picture.
Yeah. Well, that's lovely that you say that, because that was the kind of the intention. But I think because we both do so much all the time. Obviously, a lot of the Hyyts stuff is done when we're with other people in sessions and producers, and passing stuff backwards from different amazing people all over the world, which is the best thing to be able to do. But Sam's constantly making beats. Maybe not so much these days. Maybe we're lazy these days. But back when we were making the EP, like, and I'm constantly writing songs on the guitar, or just like things when I'm out and about. So I think like that was one of these things where I'd had that little thing just about growing up, and it was like 4 verses longer, and it had a terrible melody, and I brought it into Sam, and then we like changed it up. We like gutted half of it, and he like made a much cooler melody, and we added some track, and that's kind of how that one happened. But yeah, it's pretty hefty lyrically. It made my mum cry.
Yeah, everything makes your mum cry though.
Yeah, that's true.
That idea of like sonic fluidity that you mentioned as well, what was the final piece of the puzzle in finding that for yourselves as a duo?
Oh, I mean, to be fair, I don't think we've found it yet.
Still finding it.
Yeah, still finding it. I'm not sure, like, well, obviously people definitely find it, you know, you've got Kings of Leon, bands like that have, you know, 6, 7 albums and all kind of like sound the same. Yeah. Amazing, like all of them are amazing.
You're not ragging. I don't think Caleb Paula will see us. I don't think he really knows who we are. But
no, I'm genuine massive Kings of Leon fan. But no, for us, just because we kind of like, we aren't restrained to any like instrument or whatever. We've got a computer with loads of like light up gizmos on it. We can kind of like go down any sonic path we kind of want to. So that makes it a little bit harder to find a distinctive sound.
Yeah.
And it is quite daunting sometimes, because sometimes I think it'd be easier to have a distinctive sound a lot of the time.
I think you're right, yeah, because you'd have like a place to start, or you'd know,
yeah,
oh, this sounds like us, this doesn't sound like us. But that's kind of the cool thing too. I think the good thing about this project is it is highly collaborative, and it is highly like, listen to the record, there's like a big, that EP, sorry, there's like a, you know, Blue and White's like a big kind of disco dancey song, and then you have like an 80s synth pop thing. Like there are, obviously it's all tied together by certain things, but we have the freedom to do whatever we want, and I think that means that you're constantly changing with the sound. Like the stuff that we're working on right now, whether it's going to be an EP or an album, or we're not quite sure yet, but it has a new kind of sound that's kind of gone on from Kind of Need You Tonight was like the last song we did on that EP, and that's kind of like, I'd say the closest thing to the new sound that we're working with, like that big kind of like a lot more popular, a lot kind of more direct, and I think sometimes you just have a song that opens up this new kind of avenue of like, oh, that's how we can do things now, and that's a new sound we can like play with. And what if we were to like listen to all those old yacht rock records that we love, but try and make it sound like 1975 and stuff like that, rather than before we were listening to doing a lot more of that with like dark dance. What if we were to take techno but try and make it a pop song like Georgia does, or something like that? And I think you just naturally, as creators, as people that listen to music, you just naturally listen to different things. Your tastes kind of change over months, years, and you want to make slightly different things too. So I think that's constantly changing. And if you did have a sound, it would be easier, but you'd also be tied to that one thing. Like you wouldn't feel the same forever, and you'd be constantly making the same song. I think that's why bands like Kings of Leon sometimes either completely uphaul their sounds or kind of lose their magic, because it's like they're just writing the same song and they're kind of stuck to it, you know. So we're kind of lucky we don't have that yet, until we get the hit, and then it's do that again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny you bring up a band like Kings of Leon, because that's not an influence that we would expect from you.
No, but they're one of our biggest influences.
Yeah. 100%.
Someone else in that domain would be System of a Down.
Oh my God, like honestly, Toxicity is like the album that made me listen to music. I remember I had a little blue Walkman with some 41 label on it, and I used to go, I think I went on a holiday with my mum and dad, and I just listened to that like constantly, and I was like, this, I didn't know music could be like this. It was mental. So System of a Down, we were going to go to Download last year because they were headlining, but I don't think they are. I don't think American bands can come over this year, but we were going to go just to see them, supported by Korn as well.
Oh, come on.
Which would have been so sick. So yeah, no, but like big new metal is like when we get drunk at parties with our friends, after 2 or 3 hours the new metal comes on. That's like kind of, you fall back on like the things that you're maybe like, you know, you're playing the cool records at first and you're all dancing around to like Grimes and shit like that, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, a couple more beers and everyone's listening to Korn. It's so good.
Give it a couple of years and we'll have like nails coming out our heads.
MTR vibes, man.
Yeah.
I mean, with bands like that, System of a Down in particular, because we don't hear them too much sonically in your music, is it more almost the philosophy of those bands that you take influence from?
Big time, yeah. I think like you're most influenced by the music that you really like were like lit up by when you were a kid, right? I think like when you were younger, and I think that's why like now all the kind of music, people our age that are making music right now, there's a total resurgence in this pop punk, Blink-182 emo thing, because that's the music that people were like in love with when they were young, and obviously it wasn't cool then, and now it's come back in like a cooler way. I think it is more of a philosophical thing. Also, like, I think what we always try and bring is like an intensity. The thing about System of a Down's music, for example, is that the intensity. I just love the fact that like the bridge for Chop Suey is just him screaming "Father" over and over again. It's just the most intense thing that you can, like a grown man with a big beard and tattoos shouting "Father" into your face. It's the most intense thing ever. I think we try and get that, maybe not always in the recorded, but when you see us live, that intensity is very much there. Like,
I think also with like the philosophy, what you're talking about, with a lot of these bands, they kind of have this like world building mentality where they like when you go into like a Slipknot hole or like a one of these holes, NTR holes or whatever, you just go into their world. You can go into like from one video to another. It's just you're totally submerged into their world, and that's something we've always kind of wanted to do. We've always wanted to like transport the listener or the viewer into Hyyts land, whatever that is, or the Hyyts world. Kind of. But that's
a really good point, actually. And we've always tried to do that, even with like whenever we get our photos taken, it's the same kind of lights. We always tend to use the same kind of colors on our. And then now it is like it's obviously they weren't thinking about Instagram and social media and stuff like that, but now that's what it is, and we're constantly trying to like make it feel like whenever you come and you listen to a song or you watch a video or you enter one of our social medias, it's like you're in this little bubble of world. And obviously they did it amazingly. I'm not saying that we did it as good as them, but that's what we're trying to do.
We're pining at it.
Yeah,
I reckon they did. I think they knew Instagram was coming with like some death magic.
Oh man, yeah. So
Instagram.
For sure, dude. Yeah. They're gonna build a prison.
I mean, with this EP, the main component of the world building for me seems to be the story, to come back to that side of it. And when you were constructing that, I know that you were in kind of quite opposite places. You were very much in love.
Yeah.
You were a little bit heartbroken.
Big time.
At what point did those two opposite sides of the spectrum, those two stories come together to build a new story and the story of the EP as a whole?
That's really interesting. I mean, I guess we had Bad Tattoo, which was like something that which was like my kind of story that we'd written together of like getting over this person, but realizing they were going to change you forever, and that kind of being a beautiful thing, and being like, I'm still going to keep myself open. And then we had Blue and White, which was Sam's thing when he went through his first breakup of lockdown, first of two, fucking big man, and he'd written this song about it, and then we worked on that together, and so we had these two different things, and then this is before we even had the idea of an EP. We were still just making songs, and then Sam had a big heartbreak and was like seriously out of it, like not eating, got really skinny, wasn't really enjoying anything, stopped drinking, which was the one signifier for me. Like, for other people,
that was when we did the last interview, I think, wasn't it?
Was it?
I think you'd stopped drinking just at that point.
Yeah. So you saw him right at if you go back and look, you'll see gaunt, depressed Sam with like the drip in the corner just out of shot. No, and then I think like it was one of those things where, I mean, we're just like best friends as well, and now like business partners in a weird way, which is like a really strange kind of like constantly changing relationship. But I think because we're just such a part of each other's lives, and we also make music together, that story is constantly kind of like happening anyway. And so for us, it was like, we're going to put this down because we like to write about ourselves and our own thing. And then as soon as it was like, we think that we'd like to do a EP or a body of work, that was when the story started to kind of come into place, and we were like, it'd be cool to make it like a thing. And because we've both got experiences on either end of those spectrums that we can draw on right now and in the past, then it can be really, we can do that organically and really draw from those things. So I can't remember when that decision happened, but we'd already had a lot of the stuff kind of done, just naturally through wanting to create this thing. And then I do remember the moment where I think, I can't remember which one of us it was, but it was like, it could be like it could go like this, And then there was at the moment of like, and then it could go backwards instead, which is cool.
Have you listened to it backwards?
No, I've not.
Wow, what a question. I've listened to I think once when I was really, really drunk and you'd gone to bed. Right. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to listen to it backwards.
That's really backwards as in like forwards?
Yeah, so you would start with intro. Yeah.
No, I think that in a way that would be more, I think the reason that we did it backwards mostly was so that it was super heartbreaking, basically, like we like Pixar, just like emotionally manipulative as much as possible, like so that by the time you get to the good bit, you know how it ends, and it's kind of bittersweet. So I think listening to it backwards would actually be, I'm going to do that. Yeah. We tend to not listen. It's really weird. You listen to the songs so many times before they get made, and then kind of creeps you out to listen to them again. I don't know, I'm quite weird, and because you're constantly working on other ones, you've got things to listen to that are your own stuff, and like I tend to not really, once it hit Spotify, I tend to not listen to it unless it's like 4am and I'm with my pals and they're like, play your tunes. So I don't know, but that's a really good idea. I
might do that. I might listen to it, although I love it being backwards for some reason, or like forwards. I love it being I love listening to it backwards, not forward, backwards. I love listening to it how it originally is presented, because it's weird. I heard the other day, which is like, this is such corny information, but like,
love it.
Apparently apparently fall in love and have like 5 heartbreaks before you meet your person, on average.
Wow.
I know. And I like going into intro at the end there, because it is, even though you go into it and you know everything that's happened, or the past or the future,
wow,
and what's going to happen. Sorry, it gets so annoying.
Christopher Nolan, man.
Yeah, I know. And that's super heartbreaking. It's also nice to, it almost feels like intros like a palate cleanser, because you've gone through this whole thing, this past breakup, you know, the lead lyric, or the most like prominent lyric is "I'm ready for, you know, to go through all of this again." That kind of feels like, even though it's the start of the story we've just told, it also feels like it could be the start of the story that's going to go on
100%. I think that was kind of what we wanted to do as well, to make it feel like a big circle, you know, like you're back at the start and you're ready and stuff like that again, to do it all over again, which is the vibe. But that's a really good point. I will listen to it backwards and have a complete ego trip, which will be really nice.
Did you say 5 heartbreaks is the average?
Apparently, yeah.
What number are we on?
I think I'm on 3.
3.
Well, 2 actually. 1 should be a heartbreak, but it isn't.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Say less, fam. I got you. Sorry, watching too much TikTok.
Back it up, Tier. Yeah, I'm going to say 2.
Shit, yeah.
How many have you had?
Heartbreaks?
Because you can be, it's not a set rule.
Yeah. Well, I was perpetually heartbroken, but I look back and I'm like, the person that I'm with now, I'm like, I realise that I'm in love for the properly in love for the first time. But I thought, whenever I'd met someone after like 2 weeks, I was like, I'm in love for them. They'd like ghost me, and I'd be like, oh my god.
Yeah, those are the progressive 5.
Right. Okay. Well, I think I had loads more than 5.
Really?
Of them, yeah. But I was just like a fucking emotional teen. Do you know what I mean?
Battle hardened. Then.
Yeah, exactly. Like just covered in scars, like Gears of War stuff.
Yeah, covered in like love heart shaped scars.
Yeah, exactly. Really boss and scary.
Yeah. How about you? How many are you on?
2. Maybe 1 or 2.
Really?
1 or 2.
Ask me again.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. Well, 3 to go, boys. Catch up. The water's fine.
I mean, a question for each of you then. What's a really important lesson you've learned from heartbreak? And what's a really important lesson you've learned from properly being in love for the first time?
That's such a nice question.
It's a beautiful question, man. You go first.
This sounds so cliched, but I think the most important thing about being in love is patience. Because like I think when you read books and you watch films and you listen to music, which we all do, and as we're like into all those things, and love is like taught to you from such a young age to be this thing that's like this undying. It never wavers. You never don't like the person. It's like just this happens all of a sudden, and then that's you for life, and it never goes away, and there's no faults to it, it's no doubts. That's just so not true. And I think like learning that for yourself for the first time, like having those doubts and then realizing, no, actually that's just part of it. And having the patience of being like, you know, this person's driving you mental, or there are things that you're just never going to change, that you're never going to be okay with, things that you're like, because I think you can be a complete perfectionist as well and be like, oh well, we're 3 months in and this person does this thing that really annoys me, and so I'm just going to chuck it because like whatever. But like you're never going to find someone that's perfect. So being patient and being like, okay, I'm going to work on that myself, and like work on that with this person, and be okay with the fact that sometimes there's just going to be times where, you know, I need some time by myself, or I'm going to have my doubts, or there's going to be times when I don't love that person as much as right now, and just kind of being okay with that, I think is the constant battle of like being in love. And it's really hard, but when you get through it, and those moments are like this compared to like the big moments, or they should be if you're in the right place, but then the rest of the time is like, this is fucking amazing, and there's those little moments and you just have to get through them.
Nice, man. You should do a dial-in like Love Guru.
I am like Love Guru.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you wear the same clothes as him, etc. For breakups, I'm probably not the guy to ask, to be honest, because I'm an insanely bitter person.
Yeah, and your breakup was like, you did not handle it well.
No, not at all.
I would not be asking for advice from you.
Not at all. No, I literally lost like half my body weight and like got so depressed and like didn't talk to anyone. I became a mute for a few months.
I feel like not drinking seems like a sensible option though.
It does,
to kind of make that decision.
That's the thing. This was the one thing.
Yeah, for me that's just not a good sign.
Usually you'd be like, oh, that's a good sign. He's like working on himself. But for you it was like,
I wanted to leave myself no reason to be upset.
there was zero joy.
Yeah.
You weren't enjoying anything in life.
No.
Like if you not, because drinking is the one thing that you enjoy more than anything.
Yeah.
If you're over drinking, I'm like, fuck, something's wrong.
Yeah. And it was easy as well. Like, that should be hard for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think like all of these classic sayings that you see on Instagram and all that, like what's meant to be is meant to be, and all these fucking things, all these bullshit things, actually, you know, is like quite a healthy way to rationalize like sad things that have happened to you. Obviously, what's meant to be is bullshit, because you know, like the Holocaust didn't even happen.
Very true, actually. Never thought about it like that. Fuck.
Yeah. But obviously, that is no one, you know, no one went through that mental historic event and what's meant to be is meant to be.
No, I mean, yeah. I don't think you got like Hitler posting things on his Instagram with like a sunset and like a nice quote.
Yeah. Drinking his like fucking chai latte.
Yoga, is this fun?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's probably
impersonating Hitler's probably not a good line to go to.
Well,
God, stop. But yeah, as an incredibly bitter person, I came out of it as like I came out of the, you know, like the cocoon phase, which was me doing absolutely nothing and losing loads of weight. I came out just being incredibly bitter, thinking like I'm gonna be impossible to miss from all of my exes. Like the two times I've had like major breakups, I've been like, I want to be like so famous that they can't avoid my face.
In a way, if you're gonna use your bitterness for anything, using it for like to fuel your ambition.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I'm gonna look hot, because I remember that when you were like kind of getting over it and you were going to see them or something, and you were like, I'm gonna look fucking hot. And I was like, that's a great motivator. Yeah. It's like, I want to make you jealous. You know
totally.
I think like that's a good thing as well.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's good for, they're always like big self-improvement phases, or like what you might see as self-improvement. You always kind of want to get better, or I do anyway, and I think that's something that you should embrace and, you know, look forward to in a breakup.
Wow. There was a moment on the EP I wanted to pick up on, a specific moment in the chorus of Avalanche, I think, where you say, shit, I think I fucking love you, and I'm always thinking of you. If I were to see that line written down on paper, there might be a slight corniness to it, but when I hear it in the song, it's definitely my favourite moment in that song. Wow. Probably my favourite moment on the EP.
Sick. That's you see that. Ours too. That's our favourite song.
As creators, what is it about that moment that works for you and it manages to get past the potential risk of, you know,
corniness? Yeah. Well, that's our entire adventure every day. Is basically Sam trying to contain my corniness, because like, you know, I'd be fucking Hallmark vibes if it wasn't for like, you know, like we are naturally corny. I think like embracing your natural corniness is quite a good thing. There's a line where it's like too much and all of a sudden it just becomes like shit. But I think like embracing the corniness and understanding that everyone feels those things. Like there's a reason why the corny things are corny, is because everyone feels them, right? And then fucking corporations have like latched onto that and made them shit. But I think like for the most part, these massive group sentiments are there for a reason. There's no smoke without fire, you know? And I think, like you said, a lot of it is trying to take these corny things and make them not corny. So like you said, that is quite a corny sentence when it's written down, but I think the way we did it with the melody, the way that like the whole song is super melodic and then it just kind of comes out into this collapses kind of thing, and there's no melody and the lines are even slightly different from each other in the melody that they use, and there's like loads of BVs doing slightly different things. I think like that made it quite cool and fresh, and like, oh wow, that kind of caught my ear, you know. And everyone loves to sing along to that, even though there's no real melody to it, which I think, like, for us, that's our favourite song. And that's one of the reasons, is because that bit just kind of really, like, stands out. Not our favourite song ever, our favourite song that we've made. Yeah. That's my favourite song of all time. I'm only joking. I think that's partly why that works. And I think if you can find that line, that's when it becomes magic. Because like you can spend your whole time trying to stay away from the corny things, but if you get the corny thing and then you manage to make it become just on the edge and not corny, then it's the best thing you can have, you know. And I think that's how we did it with that one. It's just like, I remember because we wrote it in that room, and I remember we had the whole verse melody and everything, and we had the first half of the chorus. And then we were both like, what if it just does something that's like not like, well, we didn't have the lyric at first, but just something that's not even a melody. And then it just felt like such a big moment that we were like, we should just say, shit, I think I fucking love you. I remember the guy who wrote it with, Josh Grant, was like, he's American. He's like, dude, do we need to swear so much? Like, you know, maybe we could say, oh my God, I think I love you. And I was like, nah, it needs to be like, shit, I think I fucking love you. Because the whole point is like, it's terrifying when you fall in love with someone. It's really like, oh shit, this person now has power over me. And that sounds like such a sociopathic way of looking at it. But it's like, it's a beautiful thing, but it's also really terrifying, because you're like, I'm no longer in control of myself. If you chose to not see me anymore, then I don't know what I would do. And that's really scary. And wanted that kind of frantic, weird energy to kind of fall into the lyrics and the melody. And So I think that's how we made that one. But yeah, sometimes they just happen. Like when we look back at that song, I'm like, it doesn't really feel like we made it, because I really like that one. A lot of the time you're like, oh yeah, remember how we did this and did that, but sometimes it just comes out in like an hour or two.
Yeah.
Like, that thing was really cool, man. Like
100%.
It's just like alchemy. It's weird.
I think there's a Scottish side to the fact that you're using swear words in it as well.
Very true.
This EP probably feels more tied to Scotland than anything you've done before. You know, you've got like references to Southside and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Kind of scattered throughout it. Why do you feel that's something that's kind of coming into your music now more so than perhaps in the past?
That's a good question. Really good.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
I think, like, again, and this is something the label are always like, we want you to be quintessentially Scottish.
I was going to say,
you know what I mean?
the label are going to love you, man.
Yeah. And when you're told, classic us, when you're told to do something, you're like, no, I don't want to do that. So like when it's like you need to be Scottish, then you don't want to. But I think we just started putting more and more of ourselves into the music and writing songs. The lyrics, it became more exciting for us for the lyrics to be things that you would actually say, or things that actually came from real life. And so it just kind of came about that the things that were really like, the songs that were really turning us on and making us go, that one's fucking amazing, were the ones that were tied from real experiences. And those, because we live in Glasgow, and Glasgow's like such a part of like the way that we write and the way that we make music, and the people and everything like that, I think it just kind of naturally bled into it, and we just kept using those songs more. And we got a couple songs about, like, because we spent a lot of time in London too, but I think there's something about, I don't know, something about Glasgow that just really like gets us in our feelings, because it's like our home, and it's such a cool, weird city. And I don't know, I think there are a lot of references, and everyone thinks the blue and white is a reference to the Scottish flag as well, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm like, especially after the Partick Thistle thing, I'm like, yes, sign me up, make us football mascots. I want to be a pundit with what's he called, Alan
Titchmarsh? I don't know.
the football guy.
Yeah, I don't know. Alan, the guy with the scar on his face.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name.
it's like, fuck music, I want to be a pundit. Do you know what I mean? Get me to mascot. I'd be a great mascot.
Yeah.
I feel like you'd be a good footballer, like one of the hot ones all the girls like, so isn't actually that good. And I can be a mascot. Vibes.
Do you feel more tied to Scotland when you spend more time away from it? Like what you're saying about going out to London and stuff
100%
like that?
actually, yeah. Not even realised until you said that just there, but that's because you realise things when you're away from them, right? Like that's a classic thing of like, even with like home and everything, when you're in it you're like, oh, this is cool, and then you go to London to write songs, and don't get me wrong, it's like the best thing in the world, we love it, but you mess it, you start messing everything, you start realising, oh, I should have said this, and I should have done this, and I should have saw that person and made the effort and gone out there and done this more, you know. And I think that's the good thing about us spending like quite a lot of our time away, is that you don't take things for granted. You realise the good things that you have, and then when you come home you hug that friend and you go and see that person and you do this thing. So I think that's what's really good about spending so much time away from home.
Kind of following on from that idea of your Scottish identity being more present in the music, are there sides to yourself that are present in this EP that you feel haven't been in your music previously?
Yeah, I think we're getting more. I mean, like, again, I think like everyone's trying to hold me back from being super duper political these days, because that's just not cool. But for like a cool young like pop band, that's not what it's about. But I think we're getting more and more there. Like, I think even on like Kennedy Here Tonight, I think we addressed. I think what I liked about the song as well is like, obviously we're being like a sad white guy crying at his ex, but I think like we addressed the problems that could come from that as well, being like, I don't want to be that guy, I don't want to bring you down, I don't want to use you like that, I don't want to do these things, you know. And I think like addressing the things like that was something that's becoming more and more, because I think at first, because we write loads of songs, we would write some that are like about politics or about something like this, and then the naturally like the loved ones or whatever ones would be the ones that got used or got released, because that's just kind of more what is easier to sell at this point. But I think with the EP we were really able to, like, I was able to use it as therapy and talk about, like, you know, my grandpa dying in is it Intro? Yeah. Yes, and like all this other crazy stuff that had happened, and like really dig deep and stuff, and in a way that I hadn't really done before, and through lyrics and stuff like that, which was really cool. And I think, yeah, those sides of ourselves, like, the great thing about the label and this whole thing is that they've like really encouraged us to be emotional guys, which is what we are, and to deal with our mental health problems and to talk about them, and get in touch with our charities and organisations and people that are doing the same thing. And it's really like helped me. I mean, I've always been a super emotional dude, but I think I'm more like, balanced in my emotions now, and even to the point of being like, yeah, maybe I'll like go and get a therapist or like talk to someone. That's not like something that I would have been ready to do a year ago, and I don't think that if it wasn't for Hyyts and all the conversations surrounding it, I don't think that that's something that I would be comfortable with. So I think like being like emotional, weird man, and showing the weird sides of yourself, because obviously like Instagram and everything like that is all about being hot, so we feel the pressure all the time to like be super hot. And then Sam said a couple times like, you know, because he runs a lot of the Instagram, for like I'll make a post and he's like, I'm not feeling myself right now, like I don't have a nice haircut or whatever, like that's quite a deep thing, you know, like to be constantly feel the pressure to like be this good looking person and show this, like broadcast this I'm perfect to everyone else. And I think like learning that and going through that, and there's some stuff about that on the EP as well, like just little moments where it's, you can kind of see like us coming to terms with what it's like to be a guy or a man in the time that we are, and I think that's quite cool, and that's something that we really want to explore further for sure.
Yeah, always a pleasure, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks man, as always.